I usually wait until later in the day to do these videos, but I've got a wedding to go to tonight, so we're going to have to get it out a little earlier today. But we're walking through every matchup to identify the must-start and sit wide receivers for Week 10 fantasy football. And I'm one of the only fantasy YouTubers working on a Saturday to get you this kind of content, so make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, getting into our first matchup, it's that lousy overseas matchup that I always hate for fantasy football unless it has to do with fantasy defense. Well, unfortunately, in this matchup, I could see a lot of things playing out that it makes it really kind of hard for me to determine who's really good and who's not in this one. So obviously, these two wide receiver ones on both teams, I'm going to have them in most start, because of the fact that London's ceiling is extraordinarily high. Week winning high any single week. It doesn't matter what opponent is. What it comes down to, and if he executes, is if the offense executes totally. And the Colts defense, I have no idea what to think them overseas, although they have done very well this season. But it doesn't matter, like I said, with London. He's a must start. To me, Michael Pittman's a must start because of his extremely high floor and how efficient this offense has been as well. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, those two guys back to back in my rankings. If you have a premium subscription at fsroundup.com, you know exactly where they're ranked, and they're pretty good. I mean, I do like them, and they would be higher ranked if this was not an overseas matchup, because I like both of those guys and their involvement in the last several weeks. Darnell Mooney remains a low-tier flex if you want a big play. It is possible with Mooney, but I would say London is clearly the superior option in Atlanta's offense, to the point where it doesn't really matter if Mooney is out there or not. He's just not going to get that many targets. But I'll reiterate this again. I have no idea what to expect from either side of each team. I have no idea. Atlanta's defense is very hot and cold. They've showed up really good against good opponents, and then they've lost to the worst teams. Indianapolis, they looked atrocious last week, but defensively, I think they'll do pretty well. So I do worry about Atlanta's offense, but Drake London is still in must-start territory. Now, our next matchup is the Cleveland Browns at the New York Jets, and it's very simple to me. You just play Garrett Wilson, and that's it. Garrett Wilson, as of the time of this filming, expected to be back in the lineup. So Garrett Wilson is a guy that you must start, regardless of who the quarterback is. And even now, we still don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback between Tyrod Taylor and Justin Fields because of an advantage purpose. It's so stupid what they're doing over there. And Aaron Glenn looks like a grade A idiot. But Garrett Wilson, I do have to say, regardless of quarterback, he's done excellent this year. And then the guys I would play if I was like completely desperate, Adonai Mitchell would be the first guy. Like, I would play him over both Cleveland options because Dylan Gabriel's throwing to those tight ends. You do not want to play a Browns wide receiver. Cedric Tillman's back, but who really cares? As long as they don't have Flacco, they've got no upside in Cleveland. The New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers is our next matchup here. And I don't view a must start in this matchup because of the quarterback issues and ceiling issues with some of these guys. I mean, Ted McMillan is the best option to me because he's got the safest combo of floor and ceiling. I think his ceiling probably around 20 points or so, and his floor is right around 10 to 12 points. And then Chris Olave, I got a bunch of flack for last week ranking him where I ranked him. And I said in that video, listen, I just worry about the quarterback situation with Tyler Shough. First of all, the guy sucks. And second of all, when a new quarterback comes in, he could prefer either, any receiver he wants to. It might be different. So Rashid Shaheed out-targets Chris Olave by 5 targets last week. Well, with Rashid Shaheed gone, I would be much more confident to put Olave in the lineup this week if his quarterback was not terrible. I mean, Spencer Rattler's no good. It got worse. I mean, it is so bad. So Chris Olave is still in my top 30 this week, but I don't feel great about it. This is a floor play. I would say his floor is right around 12 points, and I would say in the ceiling in this game, probably around 15. So solid play, but I just do not have much excitement to play Olave. And then Xavier Legette, if you want a deep shot, I think he obviously can give you that, but he's completely week to week, and you really don't know when he's going to go off. And then the two New Orleans wide receivers you want to keep your eye on is Brandon Cooks and Devon Vele now. Brandon Cooks, I would expect to get a little more work, and Devon Vele could be involved involved, but again, when you've got a quarterback as bad as Tyler Shough, you really have no hope. I mean, this guy is absolute garbage. He is a disgrace to the sport. So you just cannot rely on a New Orleans wide receiver. I know I'm tough on the guy, but I mean, come on. It is so effing bad out there. The New England Patriots at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Emeka Egbuka is obviously a must-start. I think it's going to be hilarious going through the entire rest of the season because it's already been like this. I have been fighting everybody about Emeka Egbuka's true value in fantasy. He's a wide receiver one, not questioned, even at this point, especially now, with Godwin being out for the next several weeks at the very least. No Mike Evans, obviously, and no Bucky Irving right now still. How do you not view Emeka Egbuka as a number one wide receiver? That's what I would like to ask people who fight me on that question. Stephon Diggs is the highest end flex. No Kayshon Boutte this week. I would expect him, based on snap counts, routes run on a weekly basis, to be their wide receiver one. But the reality is, he's got more children pending than he has touchdowns. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. And then Tampa Bay as well. Tez Johnson, I do think, is a decent flex option. In this matchup versus New England, I think they will put up points in this game. And at this point, you just kind of have to view Sterling Shepard as no more than like a Wan'Dale Robinson light. Like, he gets 6 targets a game, and it's fine. I think he will do fine with Baker Mayfield to give you like 8 points in a full PPR, but he's not a touchdown guy. Sterling Shepard is definitely not on the level of Tez Johnson, but I would play him over Douglas. Demario Douglas is the last guy I view as viable in this matchup because of the fact that he does do well when they target him the ball. But if you look on FS Roundup, and we have all our snap counts, all our routes run, the dude he was in on 16 snaps last week. And that was with Kayshon Boutte leaving the game early. It's a very sketchy play. Based on New England's offense and the way May's playing, it's a high upside play, but it is a very, very uncertain and very scary play, I would say. The Baltimore Ravens at the Minnesota Vikings is our next matchup, and Justin Jefferson is definitely still a must-start. I riled a lot of people up this week when I was saying, are we sure Justin Jefferson is what we thought he was? And I mean that, and I explained it further in the live stream later that night. My whole point on that is to say, I'm not sure he's the best receiver in football. He has not been exactly quarterback proof this year for fantasy football. In fantasy football, Garrett Wilson has done better this year with a bad quarterback than Justin Jefferson has. That doesn't mean, though, you bench Justin Jefferson. The guy's floor has been awesome. Like, he's giving you, basically on a weekly basis, anywhere between 14 and 16 points. That has a place in your lineup. I'm not telling you to bench him, especially against the Ravens defense, which could be bad or it could be good. But either way, he's too important to the offense. But his ceiling is just about at 16 to 17 points. So you can't expect that much from him. Zay Flowers is the best flex in this matchup. I think a lot of people will fight me on this, though, and say Jordan Addison is the better flex. And listen, I can understand an argument to a point because Addison has been better on a per-touch basis this year than Zay Flowers. And they both have that boom or bust quality to them. But I would argue right back at you that Zay Flowers' floor has been a lot higher this year than in years past. Like, his floor games are getting you around 10 to 12 points in a full PPR. And I think that his ceiling is ultimately higher than Addison's, though. Better quarterback by a long shot, and also gets the most amount of targets on a weekly basis between the two because he is Baltimore's wide receiver one. So I will easily take Zay Flowers over Jordan Addison. But I do think Addison's flexible, and what I would play over the other deep shots in Baltimore, Rashad Bateman and DeAndre Hopkins. But of course, with Lamar, they are both playable options. But I want to go back to this Zay versus Jordan Addison argument because I think people will fight me on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a start-sit poll on our site, fsroundup.com. So I'm going to type in Zay Flowers right here, then go to chat, then go to start a poll for week 10. And I'm going to add Jordan Addison in this one, and I want you to go vote on this. It's completely free to vote and completely free to start your own start-sit poll so you can get live feedback and results from the rest of the community on what you should be doing with your start-sit decisions this week. And if you want access to my top 250 rankings, the automatic waiver tool, that is the premium subscription, which is league-winning features for $6 a month. But ultimately, if you want personalized advice on what you should do with your roster as far as trades and waiver acquisitions, moves to make before the playoffs, that is where we need to do a team breakdown for you. You can email us at fsroundup@gmail.com, send me your full team, and I will break down your team for you, completely personalized. I know a lot of people have gotten them this year and been very happy with the results of that team breakdown. It's very detailed. I take a lot of time on these, and I want to make sure you are prepared for your fantasy football playoffs. So you can do that as well. Now, going to our next matchup, it's the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins, and I think Jalen Waddle is still must start. The way I look at Jalen Waddle is as long as they're in Miami or as long as they're in a dome, he's a must-start guy. His ceiling has been about 25 points this year, and I think Buffalo's defense is beatable, and they're going to obviously have to throw to keep up with the Bills' offense. So Jalen Waddle, to me, is easy the best option in this matchup. And then Khalil Shakir is the only other viable guy. This guy actually quietly has had a pretty safe floor of about 10 to 12 points on a weekly basis, but obviously his ceiling is not Jalen Waddle high. It's not 25 points. His ceiling's about 18 to 19 points, which is good, but it's rare and few and far between when Khalil Shakir hits that. So if you just need a safe flex play in full PPR, Khalil Shakir's a very solid option. And then I would play at this point Malik Washington over Keon Coleman, but I'm not going to do it still because that's more of a statement ranking right there, ranking Keon behind Malik Washington, because it's bad at this point. I mean, he has no business being on any fantasy football roster, and I've seen him be dropped even in dynasty leagues. And I got to tell you, I don't have a tremendous argument against it, especially if you're in a shallow dynasty league. Not telling you to do it. I'm just saying I've seen it done, and I don't argue with a lot of people on that one. The New York Giants at the Chicago Bears. Rome Odunze somehow finds himself still in must-start territory for me. Maybe I'm just a sucker for Rome Odunze. I think the guy is awesome. I think he's their wide receiver one, and I think his ceiling is too high to put on the bench. To me, he's got a little Drake London in him because I think of him as a guy that can win a week, any given week, regardless of matchup. But unlike Drake London, the offense doesn't run through him on a weekly basis. Drake London, the passing game, runs through him. DJ Moore last week, way more important than Rome Odunze. Obviously, if you played him, you got a goose egg out of Rome last week, so it's hard to convince people he's still a must-start. But against the Giants defense, and I think his upside is really the reason he remains as a must-start, but he's on notice for sure. And I would say Wan'Dale is the second best option. He's getting less downfield targets because those are going to Slayton. But I do still think he has a lot of full PPR upside, and he's got a quarterback that's willing to push it down the field. DJ Moore, on the other hand, actually has quietly had a relatively safe floor as well, but the ceiling game are few and far between. So again, I think in the matchup, it's fine, and I don't have much excitement to play DJ Moore, but if you just need a solid flex start, I think he's a fine play. Darius Slayton, also not that far behind. I think he's a really solid play on a weekly basis. The big play is going to happen, and I think it could be this week. The Bears defense has given up a lot through the air, and they're giving up a lot, period, end of story. So I do think this could be the week Slayton gets the big game because they're always targeting him down the field. And Olamide Zaccheaus, I do think has developed a role in this offense that's hard to kind of take away from him. So if you want a deep flex play, I think Zaccheaus should be in your options. The Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans is our next matchup. Nico Collins also somehow still a must start. I like Nico Collins a lot. I think he's a tremendous talent, but obviously it hasn't worked out great. But I will say this. For Nico Collins, I think it's a very safe play because the Jags secondary doesn't scare me for one. And number two, the Jags pass rush actually isn't that scary either. And Davis Mills was kind of the same thing for Nico as CJ Stroud has been all year because they've been getting tons of pressure on the quarterback, and neither one of them can throw on the run. So it's basically even Steven as far as the quarterbacks have been for Nico. But I think this week, I actually think Nico could have a big day if the Jags pass rush doesn't step up their game according to what they've been doing all season long, which is not getting many sacks. The Jacksonville wide receiver room is a mess. I mean, you've got Brian Thomas Jr. out. Obviously, Travis Hunter is out. You've got guys like Diami Brown banged up, but he's going to play. And I do think that he's ultimately flexible in this game too. But Jacoby Myers is definitely the best option for sure. Jacoby Myers, I would say that he comes in right away. The draft capital they gave up for him was outrageous in my opinion. Even though it wasn't a first and a second, I still think a fourth and a sixth is too much. But that clearly shows they're going to use him. And I would expect him to get a lot of targets in this one. And I think Parker Washington is a better flex play than Dimey Brown as well. And I'm just going to stay away from Texans receivers. Without CJ Stroud, I'll stay away from them. I don't think they're going to be that involved. And it's just kind of a jumbled mess. And I don't know who to play on a weekly basis. It's just too much, and there's too much going on. Way too many moving parts. The Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's the man. He's the man. I mean, just get over it, I guess, right? He's just tremendous. You continue to play him. Marvin, how are you in must-start territory? I'll tell you how. It turns out Kyler Murray's been the problem all along because Marvin has looked good with Jacoby Brissett. Because this guy can see over the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have a shrimp trying to get on his tippy toes and look over the line of scrimmage every time he throws over the middle. Marvin's been effective. So you continue to ride that wave even though the matchup is bad. And Marvin's right on the border of must start. He made it in because he's been really good. So I'm going to start to kind of lean into that talent and lean into the momentum that he's got because he actually has real momentum right now. Rashid Shaheed comes over this week and I think he's immediately playable. I think he opens up the downfield threat like they haven't had all year. I mean, Torrey Horton's a downfield threat for sure, but I think he's been also a little bit of a slot demon as well. So I do think Torrey Horton is still playable. I don't love Cooper Kupp at this point, and I do think that Rashid Shaheed is in position to get a big play because Darnold has been playing out of his mind. And then Michael Wilson, I also would say, is just a guy that maybe in future weeks I'll consider him a flexible option, but I'm not there yet, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to bench Michael Wilson. The Detroit Lions at the Washington Commanders actually is pretty simple. You play Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams is a better option than Deebo Samuel. And I'm really curious to see how many people fight me on that because I saw some people saying, how is Deebo not in the top 30? Well, have you seen the guy play lately? It's not been good. First of all, Jaden is not healthy, and Marcus Mariota with Deebo, not been good. And Deebo has not been healthy either, and ever since the injuries piled up with him, he hasn't looked very good. I want Deebo to do well. He was one of my most drafted players this year, but I have to call a spade a spade. Deebo has not been good lately, and I do not see it getting any better in this matchup. Of course, by semantics, he's got to be flexible because he's the only guy left outside of Jalen Lane, but I'm not playing Jalen Lane, and I'm not playing Chris Moore. He's the only guy left. Deebo obviously is playable, but is he a high upside play? I don't view that way at this point, and he definitely has a very tiny floor. The Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. I love this matchup. I think the line on this one is actually kind of crazy. I think 49ers, actually, if I bet on a game this week, that will be the one I bet on. I'll bet on the 49ers to win this one because Kyle Shanahan has owned Sean McVay in this rivalry. But of course, from a fantasy perspective, you start both Los Angeles Rams wide receivers. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams go right in your lineup. Matt Stafford is playing at an MVP level this year. Jawan Jennings is the only other viable option. I'm not going to play Kendrick Bourne. It hasn't worked lately. Demarcus Robinson is nowhere to be found as well. And honestly, that's just kind of it. I mean, Jawan Jennings is definitely the only other playable option, but he's not a high-end play. He's in my top 30 this week because I think he should be important enough to get work in this game. And if it is a high over-under, they'll score points, and Jennings should be important enough for a 10 to 12-point production line. But his ceiling is not ultimately very high. So I don't consider him a great flex option that I would play over Stephon Diggs, for example, or even Jameson Williams. I'll play either one of those guys over Jennings, but of course, he has to be a flexible option this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Los Angeles Chargers. Ladd McConkey, fire him up. I think this matchup is great. I really do. I think that I've been saying all week, the Steelers, I expect to lose this game. They travel to the West Coast. It's never good. Mike Tomlin is not good on the West Coast. Ladd McConkey, to me, is kind of been the one who's been untouchable with the addition of Oronde Gadsden. So he has kind of separated himself from the pack in Los Angeles. To me, DK Metcalf, I would personally play over the other Los Angeles options only because we know DK will be a big play threat. and has plenty of targets coming his way in this game when they're going to be losing and they're going to be down bad and they're going to need to throw the ball. He's scored touchdowns more often than not, so I'll continue to ride that wave. Quentin Johnston, though, and Keenan, both pretty high-end flexes. Again, I want options against the Steelers secondary. I think they're both high-end flexes, and I think DK is a really high-end flex as well. So there's a lot of receivers you could play in this one. Honestly, it wouldn't bother me if you wanted to take the shot on Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson either. I'm just not going to go ahead and do that, and I'm not going to recommend my audience to do that because in most leagues, 10-man leagues, 12-man leagues, there's better options out there to me. And the last matchup of the week, the Philadelphia Eagles at the Green Bay Packers. This one is a mess. Oh my gosh. Both wide receiver rooms, man, I don't know what's going to happen. A.J. Brown's coming back, so that means that I've been saying this for weeks. You can rank these however you want. Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown are back-to-back in my rankings. Back-to-back. So rank them however you want to. I view Devonta Smith as a slightly better option because his chemistry with Jalen Hurts isn't getting actively deteriorated. That's the way I look at it, though. But I don't care how you look at it because they're that close to my rankings. Romeo Doubs is also a good flex option in this one as well. In fact, I think that based on situation, he could be ranked above Devonta Smith and AJ, but I don't view his ceiling as high as those other two guys because I don't think he's the talent that those other two guys are. But because of Tucker Kraft's, absence now moving forward, and if you saw Romeo's comments about it, you would think that he had passed away. He's okay. Romeo Doubs, it's okay. But Romeo Doubs should be definitely considered a very high-end flex. And I think Christian Watson also should be considered a very high-end flex as well. But I'm not going to play Matthew Golden, even with the injury to Tucker Kraft. And that's the extent of this one. Jumbled mess, but there's some playable options in here with high-end upside and high ceilings. If you want to see the full top 30 wide receiver rankings on the week, click on this video right here.